The opinions, viewpoints, and beliefs presented on this program do not necessarily reflect those of the management, the affiliates and broadcast partners, or the sponsors. Listener discretion is advised.
Scarefest Radio, the radio you can see.
And hello everyone, and welcome to another fine edition of Scarefest Television. The original broadcast date is January 24th, 2020. And tonight we're doing something just a little bit different, something we've been talking about amongst ourselves in the co-host world. But tonight our guest is Brandy Green of Ghost Hunters International. My co-host is Mr. Chris Sutton, and Mr. Chris Sutton will be doing the interview completely solo with no input from me whatsoever. So, sink or swim with Sutton. Sink or swim.
What a heavenly night. Okay, here, finally get things my way.
Well, before I let you start, I gotta rattle off some of the business. Everybody, volunteer applications are online at thescarefest.com. If you want to volunteer for the Scarefest, and let me go ahead and head off a rumor. No, we're not already full. We got like one or two teams that are full. We've still got plenty of spots for you if you want to volunteer to help out at the Scarefest. Go to thescarefest.com, click volunteers, and you'll find that. And also the speaker applications are online. We're already getting a buttload of speaker applications, and it figures they'd all come in nice and early and thick this year. The year we probably won't be able to have as many speakers due to the renovations at the convention center. But that being said, give it a shot, everybody. And one more quick plug for me. Tomorrow, if you would like to meet me in person, and my semi-glorious winter beard, notice I trimmed it up real nice and got a haircut. Vet City Comic-Con down in Bowling Green, Kentucky. I'll try to talk about that at the end of the show if I have time, but Scarefest will be there. And that's about it. I guess I'm going to turn it over now to Mr. Chris Sutton.
That's Coyote Chris Sutton. Thank you very much, Mr. Forsyth. Brandy, it is so great to be able to sit here and talk with you. I'm not even going to call this an interview because we've sat and chatted before, and so that's how we're going to play this. We're just going to talk like we have in the past.
All right.
What's that?
Okay, sounds good.
You game with that. Just give everybody some background. I met Brandy for the very first time in Omaha, Nebraska last March. And we've done a couple other events together since then. And I did not know her from Eve. When I met her, I'd seen her on television a couple times, but she's one of the brightest people in and outside the paranormal I've talked to. And she's just a pleasure to be around. She's a lot funnier than you think she is. So we're going to see if we can get that humor to come out tonight as well, because Brandy, you are one of the funniest people I've seen. But we'll talk about that later. But yeah, it was such a pleasure to meet you. And Wes and I were talking about, doing individual interviews amongst the co-hosts, and so I'm like, I got to get you on, and here we are. And so I'm so glad that you said yes. And I guess I'll start off a little bit about like an interview. So everybody knows you from Ghost Hunters International, but before that, what made Brandy Green?
Wow, that's a loaded question. So I grew up in Minnesota. My mom totally believed in the paranormal. My dad didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And I always had kind of a profound interest in history and anthropology. I wanted to be an Egyptologist when I was a little girl. I guess, you know, coming from a large family, I unfortunately experienced a lot of death, you know, and so it was always in the back of my mind, like, what happens? Is this it? And coming from such a, you know, my mom being a believer and my dad being a skeptic, I kind of wanted to know who's right. And so that kind of stemmed, my interest sort of stemmed from that in terms of the paranormal. And so, you know, I founded my own team based in the Twin Cities when I was like in high school and into my early 20s. And then I just sort of fell into television, not on purpose.
How do you fall into television? I mean, because you know how it is today. Everybody out there and their mama wants to get on television. How did you fall into television, into Ghost Hunters International?
Yeah, well, I think it's different now. Now everyone wants to do it. Back like 2008 is when I joined GHI, and it was a different time. It was a very different time back then. I always say it was the Wild West of reality television, especially international reality television. We did things on that show that would never happen now in television production. But I had known Barry Fitzgerald, and I had known him before GHI. And it was probably 6 months into the first season, and he called me. I was at work, and he called me and he asked me if I would be interested in submitting an audition tape to Pilgrim Films, because they had just lost 3 cast members and they were in desperate need of someone to fill in.
Were they
no.
killed or what? Are they
they left the show.
Gotcha.
So, and so I said no, and he kept asking me. And finally, I sent in like a 1 to 2 minute terrible audition tape. And 2 days later, I had gotten a call from Rob Katz, the executive producer, and he said, if you're interested, it's yours. You have 2 weeks to quit your job, to get a passport, to get on the road. And I was 23, you know, it was like, what? What is happening? And it didn't really hit me like exactly what was happening until I got to the UK, and everyone had an accent, and I was like, what's going on?
Where am I?
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, and people might think, you know, oh yeah, you know, she's just saying that. No, after knowing you for a little bit, I totally believe that was like, you know, you were basically drag kicking and screaming into this whole thing. So anyway, you make it, you get on there, and you know, you have these adventures, and I know you have so many great stories about them. Today I'm at work, and so magically our internet went down, so I got my phone out and I watched the episode where you were in Romania at the castle, at the Baffy Castle and Dracula's castle. And it's just watching you guys. It's like, you know, it's old school. I mean, now we call it old school stuff. And so, but, you know, I thought that was a pretty cool. And this is one of we were talking about you being funny, because you got this really wonderful dry sense of humor. I remember there was I think it wasn't Facebook, it was a Twitter thread. And somebody said something about going someplace, and Dan Class, our friend Dan, goes, hey, Brandy, have you ever been to like Waverly or something like that? And she, oh no. He goes, well, we got to get you out there more. And you reply back, well, I've been to Dracula's castle. It has this, I thought it was one of the funniest things, because I could see, I know Dan very well. I get to see Dan going, oh shit, you know, like Dan. And so, so I mean, that was a pretty cool show. I mean, it was funny because the biggest bulk of that hour, 45-minute show was at the other castle, not at Dracula's castle, which kind of surprised me. But it was like, but you were getting more stuff, and so you, instead of playing to the, you know, what most people who want to watch Dracula's castle, you guys just went with what was happening.
Right. And what was interesting about that is we actually went to his actual castle. Unlike, Bron Castle is the one that they set up the tourists with. They tell them, it's Dracula's castle, but it's not. He never owned it. I don't really believe he ever even visited Bron Castle. Canary Castle sits on top of this mountain, and that's where the Ottoman Turks stormed up the mountainside. And if you read all of the Dracula literature and you see those old drawings of the people on spikes, that's where it happened, right on that hillside. So, I really was at the true castle of Dracula. Pretty cool.
That is cool. And so I guess they put him out there just to show the other guys, you better not come up that hill, because this is what's going to happen to you. So that's a scare tactic and stuff. So you're on 33 episodes, I believe I read. And what were some of your favorites? I mean, what are some of the places you went to, or some of the stories that you're most fond of?
Well, I always tell the story about in Brazil when we were filming inside of the favelas. And for people that don't know what a favela is, basically it's a community that is built into the mountainside. And they're so dangerous because they basically operate off of drugs and gun running and all of that kind of stuff, prostitution. And so they're so dangerous that the police have to do air raids. They will not go in boots on the ground at all. It's too dangerous. So naturally, LA thought it a really great idea to send us into the favelas for an investigation.
Of course.
And so we had a convoy of like 6 vehicles filled with 17 white Americans with hundreds of thousands of dollars of equipment and gear, camera equipment, all of that, including cash. And we're driving through these very narrow streets up the mountain into this favela. And there's razor wire everywhere and stone apartments built on top of each other. And you look up onto the rooftops and you can see 12-year-olds holding like sawed-off shotguns and AK-47s just following our convoy. And our production coordinator had to basically pay off the godfather of the favela so that they wouldn't kill us on the spot. But the deal was, we'll take your money, but you have to agree to stay within the location, the building, until 6 a.m. If you leave before then, I do not ensure your safety, and you will probably be robbed, raped, and murdered, and not in that order. And so, we were on lockdown. And about 3 a.m., one of the other investigators and I were investigating, and she points up to the ceiling, and it was a glass ceiling, and just illuminated by the moonlight. And you look up, and you could see the silhouette of a man laying there with a gun next to him, staring down inside at us. And shortly after that, we heard gunfire. And we looked to our producer, and we're like, that was gunfire. He goes, no, that wasn't gunfire. Those were fireworks. They're just so excited that you're here. So,
Producers will tell you anything, won't they? And see, that wasn't even a ghost story. I mean, that's just, you go out in these places and people don't understand in Hollywood or wherever that these are legitimately, they will kill you. All you guys were hostage bait and everything else. And it's like, wow.
Well, that's why I say it was the Wild West back then, because those things would not happen today on these shows. There's no way that they would put anyone in jeopardy like that. So we were the lucky one.
Well, you were cutting new ground. I mean, you were going to places people hadn't been before and didn't know any better. But by international, by God, if there's a good story behind it, you guys are going to go. And I know you've told me before you'd be gone for months and months at a time, and just all over the place. It's time for a commercial break. However, we'll be back in a little bit. You're watching Scarefest Television.
Do you feel lost in life? Do you seem to be stuck in emotions that are not yours? Is your home not the sanctuary it should be? Contact Spirit Mechanics, where they take a team approach to your metaphysical and spiritual problems. Spirit Mechanics specializes in aura cleansing, stone attunement, attachment removal, and house cleansings. Spirit Mechanics tailors their approach to your individual spiritual path and needs. Now find them monthly at the Central Kentucky Mystical Market in Lexington. Or on Facebook by searching Spirit Mechanics, that's MECHANIX. Spirit Mechanics, for your spiritual health and well-being.
G'day Scarefest fans, Glenn here from FakeShemp.net. I've got a fantastic film to show you from 1975, and this one is called In of the Damned. That title is one of my favourites of all time. It paints such a vivid picture in my mind of what this film might be, even before you see it. But I want to show you two posters that paint two very different pictures for this film. The first one is the theatrical art. Check this out. It is classic Australian. It's a template that we used on so many movies in the 1970s. I love it. I think it paints a really awesome picture. It gives you an idea of what the film might be all about. But then have a look at this VHS artwork. And this one is much more of a creep show kind of tone and texture. And, well, it doesn't represent the film precisely, but it does give you a juicy little look into what the final act might be all about. I get really excited when I talk about In of the Damned. Of course, as I said, it's one of my favourite titles in cinema history, but it's also kind of groundbreaking, and it should be noted as being one of the earlier examples of the Western/horror hybrid films. Very few of those existed at the time, particularly the Western genre and the slasher genre. In fact, the term slasher didn't even exist back then. So the film takes place in the southern areas of Australia in the late 1800s, not too far from where I live actually, and it is very much a western with its stagecoaches and its horseback and its pioneering themes. The story tells of a guest house, or an inn, which is located deep in the wilderness, and it offers shelter to people that are travelling through the area. People who visit the inn go missing, and a bounty hunter arrives to investigate the disappearances and suspected murders, and the place is run by a European husband and wife who kill just about everyone who visits. It's not the best policy to have. And they have a servant who travels outwards, helping to spread mistruths about the inn to help them cover up their grisly habits. So as you may guess from the images you're looking at, In of the Damned might be a tough watch for some people. It is somewhat dated in the sense that its pacing is quite slow. The entire middle act meanders at a snail's pace, which I kind of enjoy because it's all for the sake of atmosphere and building suspense. The final act, however, brings the horror to the front, and the audience is given a massive freak show of depravity. What's so striking about this film for me is that it was actually shot in 1973, later released in 75, which places this before the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and yet so many of the images, particularly around the dinner table, bear a striking resemblance to Tobe Hooper's seminal classic. We're talking about corpses around the dinner table and the depraved family who've become so accustomed to killing that it's become a vocation. And as the trailer might suggest, there is an abundance of nudity in this film, mostly female. In fact, there's some weird ancestral stuff going on as well, which, contextually speaking, is the hallmark of the era. During the 1970s, sexuality exploded in Australian cinema, and the screens were dominated by full frontal nudity, both male and female. And in retrospect, we might look back at that as exploitation, but at the time it was far more indicative of the sexual liberation movement. So yeah, In of the Damned will not be for everyone, but those who are more vested in cinema history and the Western genre will take away the most from this film. I think it's quite haunting, it's almost surreal, it uses the Australian wilderness to maximum effect, and it just deserves far more recognition than this. So there you are, In of the Damned. It's a film that takes a lot of patience, but I think people that are real cinephiles will get a hell of a lot out of this one. I certainly love it. As I said, it's full of atmosphere. It's kind of Hitchcockian in its tone. It's slasher, it's western, it's gruesome, it's classic, and track it down. It is available on YouTube, I believe, in full. There should be DVDs floating around the world somewhere. I am sure you can Google it and find them. I hope you enjoy it as much as I do, and I'm going to catch you next week. Ciao.
There's a number of different places that I had been that still sort of have stuck with me, I guess, because I am a skeptic and I don't like not being able to come up with alternative explanations. And there are still a few places that I still scratch my head when I think about it. One was when we were in Costa Rica. We did this island prison in Costa Rica called San Lucas Island. It's basically Costa Rica's version of Alcatraz. So we went there, and the story is that at one point in time, the prisoners had gotten free, and they took over the island prison. And it was just complete carnage. They were murdering everyone and anyone on that island. And there was a female nurse there, and they had killed her. They'd cut her up into pieces, and then they had raped her.
In that order.
And then they drew on the walls with her blood.
Ugh.
And so I had gone into the room that her body had been discovered in, and I was doing an EVP session by myself, no camera guy, cameras on sticks. It was just me doing a true solo investigation. And I had gotten an EVP that sounds, I got audio that sounds like a female voice saying, "Help me." I don't know how to explain that. My rational mind is still searching. And it was the only thing that anyone had gotten in that room. The guys had come in and it was silent. I went in by myself and I had gotten that. No idea how to explain it. I wish I could.
Right.
Because it still bugs me that I couldn't. I still actually have it on my computer too, saved the audio. There were a lot of things like that though, that, you know, were kind of one-offs. I was in a torture chamber in South Africa, again, doing a complete solo session. And I was in there for like 2 hours, and it was complete darkness. I was sitting on the floor up against the stone wall. Nothing was happening. I had the old tri-field meter next to me. I was about to call it quits. And all of a sudden, I felt what felt like a hand brushed down my face. And immediately I'm looking for like flyaway hair or like spider webs or something. But when that happened, the one and only EMF hit happened. So the EMF meter spiked as that happened. That was it. That was it though. Nothing else. And it didn't happen again. But earlier in the night, Barry had, I think it was, he felt like someone flicked his earlobe in the torture chamber. So again, no idea how to explain that.
Yeah. And, you know, and you're very thorough with that, and you check all, like you're right, though. You want to debunk and find every logical reason in the world for something like that to happen before you go, it's a ghost, you know, like people do. And so, and in that vein, okay, so that's, you're talking back, that started back in 2008, and that's, you know, 2020. And,
I know.
And, you know, we've talked about this before, and we watched, sat in a hotel room and watched, you know, modern day paranormal shows. Yeah. What is your thoughts of the state of the paranormal today, both inside and outside of television?
Well, I feel like outside of television, you still have the very few groups that have stuck to kind of what we used to do. We tried to debunk. We tried to, you know, do it as scientifically as you can, because you're never going to be able to do this in a lab under perfect conditions.
Right.
You just can't. However, I think unfortunately the majority of these new investigators, they're simply emulating what they're seeing on television, and what is on television now is a far cry from what we used to do. All of these shows, they walk in already saying this is the most haunted place ever. Well,
right.
How do you know? Like, you've never been there. You've not, you know, like it just boggles my mind. It's everything that GHI and Ghost Hunters wasn't. And so I feel like now we live in the 10-second, you know, era. You have a 10-second video, you have 10 seconds to grab someone's attention.
Right.
That's it. And then they move on. And so people want automatic satisfaction. They want to be entertained immediately. It's not about, well, it was a draft, but it was caused by that crack in the window. They want to see an apparition with the thermal camera.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I mean, that's what they want.
Yeah.
And so it's very different, but it's become way more mainstream. So you have more people talking about it and sharing their experiences, which is good. But then on the other side of it, it's become even, I think, more of a joke, which is unfortunate.
It is. I saw something that Dave Schrader said one time about somebody was complaining about one of the major shows. And he says, the thing is that that may be true, but they're opening doors for other people. I mean, there is a little bit of good coming up, but I agree with you as far as how they're going about, you know, going about investigating, but that's what sells, and that's what they're doing now. They're trying to sell shows, and that's how they're succeeding, because that's what people want to see. But I understand with people like you, with, you know, Grant and Jason and Barry, that we're trying to do something with science. You can't replicate a laboratory, but you can always use the same methodology, the same instruments, and come up and always control what you're doing. You can control what you're doing. You can't control your environment. But always try to debunk and listen to stuff. And, you know, you got people like me who just talk, you know, just try to communicate with spirits that way. But I always love it when people come around and say, hey, but I got this, or I didn't get this, you know, so you got to do it both ways. So, I mean, if you were going to start a group or do a TV show now, because, you know, what's another thing I was thinking is that, I don't know if you've noticed, they have just put on TV show after TV show after TV show this year. I mean, I'm starting to lose track of how many, you know, and I know people in these things, and so I try to watch some of them, but it's like, wow.
Right. Well, you know, and I just learned, like, for Travel Channel, if they only have 2 spots open for shows, and what they're looking for is so specific, you know? I mean, because they're so saturated, and A&E isn't even buying paranormal shows anymore because they're so saturated. But that's the thing. It's always an ebb and flow in the paranormal. You have ghosts that hit a high for like a year or two, and then it's Bigfoot, and then it's aliens, and then it's conspiracy theories, and then it circles back around to ghosts, and it's always, it's the ebb and flow. So we're riding the ghost wave again, and give it a year and we'll be back to aliens, especially now that Trump just released the new imagery for the Space Force.
It looks
whatever.
It looks like the United Federation of Planets.
It is exactly the Starfleet.
Yeah, the Starfleet
insignia. I know. But anyway, so get ready for everything aliens coming soon.
That's right. All aliens all the time. And like you said, the ghost hunting is going to crash. And I know people out there that aren't even on shows yet, are under 5-year contracts that cannot do anything until, it's like, woof, I'm glad. And I was, signed for a little bit. Production company said I didn't want to do it. And release us off it. Thank you. Thank God, because I'm glad I'm not part of that. It's time for our next commercial break. Brandy, we'll be back to you in a little bit. You're watching Scarefest Television.
Akashic Awareness is a metaphysical healing and learning center unlike any other. A large selection of crystals, gems, and minerals greet you as you walk in the door, but from that point onward, the journey is yours. They offer a great selection of metaphysical tools, state-of-the-art holistic healing, with classes and lectures scheduled throughout the month. Akashic Awareness is open Tuesday through Saturday, noon until 6:30, 7 on Friday and Saturday. Visit their website for a current calendar of their almost daily special events and guests at akashicawareness.com. And while you are there, be sure to join their email list to stay current. Akashic Awareness, 328 Sycamore Street, Elizabethtown, Kentucky.
Join us at the Universal Energy Expo May 2nd and 3rd at the Northern Kentucky Convention Center. Meet celebrity guest COYOTE Chris Sutton. Door prizes and workshops available with admission. While here, check out our readers, healers, and one-of-a-kind vendors. Admission the day of the event is $15 daily, $20 for a weekend pass. Discount tickets now available at the Silver Wolf at 4205 Richardson Road in Independence, Kentucky. The Universal Energy Expo. Come curious, leave enlightened.
The date is January 24th, 1989, and it's 7 o'clock in the morning. Hundreds of people are gathered in a small field across the street from a Florida state prison. Fireworks, cheers, and cries of joy break out from the crowd as a white hearse is led out of the prison. Inside is the body of Ted Bundy, North America's most notorious serial killer. His reign of terror was finally over. Before his execution, Bundy was sought out by the FBI for help in profiling the Green River Killer, which ultimately led to his capture and further helped criminal profiling as we know it today. Bundy had confessed to the rape, torture, and murder of at least 30 women during his reign of terror, but it is believed that his number is much higher. It's not often that horror and comedy can come together so flawlessly, but that's exactly what happened this week in 1990 with the release of Tremors. Paying homage to classic B monster films, Tremors delivers the perfect amount of action, terror, and monster. This film is made even more enjoyable by the relationship between the main characters, played by Kevin Bacon and Fred Ward. Tremors went on to release several sequels, but the first is the most loved in the series and will forever be a cult classic. Quentin Tarantino brought us another cult classic this week back in 1996 with the release of From Dusk Till Dawn. Tarantino not only wrote the screenplay, but he also starred in the film alongside George Clooney. The vampire, drama/horror film boasts a stellar cast and saw box office success followed by a cult following. If the storyline alone won't draw you in, Salma Hayek and her role as a vampire surely will. Whiskey, anyone? And we're back with more Scarefest television.
Okay, so we've talked about the paranormal with Brandy. Now, there's other facets to Brandy's talents that not everybody knows. Here's one of them right here. Making sure I get it on there. I'm terrible getting things lined up on these things. There it is.
There we go.
Yes, Dark Dispatches. This is my own personal signed copy. And I'm so happy to have this. What is this, Brandy? What is this comic book here? What is this really cool? And what is your part in it?
Yeah, so I honestly was never really into comic books or anything, but when I started doing the convention circuit, I met some really cool people that were comic book artists. And so I thought, why not? That's one thing I haven't done yet. And so I created and wrote a comic book trilogy called Dark Dispatches. and it's kind of like X-Files meets Indiana Jones. Female lead character.
Yeah, she's a badass too.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
And so the art for the first 2 issues was done by an artist named Lazaro Suarez. And the third one, it's been slow going, but it is coming. It's written. I've actually released some excerpts of the script online. You can go to my Facebook page and stuff to see that. So it's coming. It's coming along.
Well, neat. I mean, so I know you just say, oh, I just happened to get into it. So obviously you have to be able to write. People think writing comedy, writing anything is not easy if you're going to make it entertaining. So I know that you, in college, you have a degree in secondary education?
I do, yeah.
And so you have to learn how to write if you're going to take education classes. So what is the thing that motivates you to write about this character who's obviously a very stand by herself woman who can kick your ass? And it's like, what inspired you? Because I mean, if I read you correctly, if I know you well enough, it's not just for entertainment purposes. You're making a statement of some kind.
Yeah, like I said, when I was like 6, 7, 8 years old, I wanted to be Dr. Zahi Hawass, the Egyptologist. I watched Indiana Jones, and while he was very attractive, I wanted to be him because I wanted to be the one going on these adventures, and so I grew up watching Jean-Claude Van Damme movies and all of this, but it was a very male-dominated, kind of entertainment back then. And I think in my life, having traveled like I have and having had the experiences that I've had, and I worked with 16 men on the road. I lived with them. I worked with them. I mean, that was GHI. It was very masculine. Yes. And so I thought, you know what? I can do that. I can do all of that. And so that's kind of the character. The character is kind of me, or how I feel, or what I would do in those situations. So yeah,
you're just a badass. That's cool. No, and I looked at that and I'm like, that's just really neat. It's a good way to express yourself. And so it's like, I'm here, I'm trying to write a book, and I said, damn, this is boring. And I said, that's a cool way to get your ideas and your feelings out there, and to give somebody a role model. I mean, you're talking about, those type of movies. The ones I can think of with a female lead was the Laura Croft movies.
Right.
That's the only ones I can think of. I will share this with you. I don't think I ever told you this before. I spent 4 years in archaeology, and I'm very close to the Kokia Mounds. The mound groups are down there, from about the 1200s, and built these huge mounds and had a city of about 20,000 natives there at one time. So I got to dig in that area. So it was.
Yeah, I'm a little jealous of you right now.
And I got very lucky to get that gig because I didn't have an archaeology background. But no, I understand. But I understand your love for it because you never know what you're going to find every day, and so But ghost hunting's like that too. I mean, or investigating, you never know what you're going to find. That's what's cool about it, is you might find, in your case, evidence and things like that. So in a way, it's kind of like archaeology too, because you're trying to find something that nobody's found before.
Right. Exactly.
And so that's what makes it really cool. And again, I'm trying to make sure we get all of your many talents in here. Next one's cooking. A lot of people do not know this, but you were with Bizarre Foods, Delicious Destinations with Andrew Zimmern. And that must have been an interesting experience, because he doesn't just eat at at a cafe in San Francisco. He's out in Thailand eating bugs on a stick. So, what was that experience like?
Yeah, so I worked in pre-production as a researcher for 6 seasons of Bizarre Foods, Delicious Destinations. And so what essentially my job was to find locations, like countries, cities, different, all of that, find the top foods in that area, find culturally why they're relevant, everything from history to actual restaurants. I was the first kind of form of outreach for that show. So everything you see him doing on that show, that was me coming up with all of that.
Oh, that's so cool.
So yeah, it was a learning experience, definitely, because I was so used to working out in the field, you know, and being on camera. And so working in an office and just doing research, I was writing like 150-page research reports every week and a half. I mean, that was my job. And so, yeah, it was a lot of work, and they started blending together, but I got to actually speak my very limited knowledge of Arabic with one of the fixers for one of the Amman episodes. So it was fun. It was different.
Yeah, you know, and that is, you're almost like somewhat of an expert on international locations. I mean, with Ghost Hunters International and doing this, I mean, wow, that's just, you know, I have to be honest, I've never really traveled out of the country. Maybe I stepped in Mexico one time illegally, but that's another story for another day. But,
well, I accidentally went into Russia once, so you know.
Yes, there we go.
It happens.
That's like the Waverly. Yeah, oh, you've been to Dracula's Castle. Okay, you know, I've been to Mexico. So okay, now Andrew eats stuff that looks like it comes out of a dumpster to me. I'm not sure if I would eat a lot of that, but I know in some places it's a delicacy. Did you eat some of the stuff that he ate?
No. So they had two different shows. They had the Bizarre Foods, which was the weird stuff that no one would eat. And then I did the show that was Delicious Destinations. So those were places that people actually do eat at. So not the grotesque ants and bugs and slime and all of that. No.
Gosh. And
no,
you
I'm very particular. I'm very particular with what I eat. I'm very careful because I got food poisoning on the road twice.
Oh, gosh, yeah. Yeah,
I had to be hospitalized once because of it. So not fun.
Shoot, I'd have a big old case of those Hormel Completes, probably knowing me. I wouldn't probably try local food. I'm such a big baby about what I eat. And you also have a cookbook, right?
Yeah, so I collaborated on a cookbook with my mom. They're all of her recipes, actually. I learned to make a really amazing red sauce, Italian red sauce from her. Yeah, so I took the pictures and I edited it all together, but they're all her home cooked recipes.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And I had the honor of not only meeting your mother, who's a delightful person, but also eating some of her wares. Oh my goodness, it was so good.
Yeah, she's pretty amazing.
Well, I'll tell you what, there's only a little bit of time left for us. And I want to get you a chance to let people know where they can find you and maybe some of the things you'll be doing this year.
Yeah, so I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter, Instagram and Twitter, it's Miss Brandy Green. Facebook, just type in my name, you'll find me. I'm doing some events this year. April 18th, I'm in Ballinger, Texas. And then in May, in the first part of May, I'll be doing an event at Melbourne Manor in Melbourne, Iowa. And then I have a few more things later on in the year that we're kind of still working details out on. I will be in Hinsdale, New York in October. So yeah, all of that's updated on my website, missbrandygreen.com, or on any of my social media.
Well, it's great. And she's great to follow. She's always got fun things to say out there, especially complaining about the weather and showing cute pictures of her dog. And so, Brandy, it's a true pleasure, and I'll be talking to you soon. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the next break, and this is Scarefest Television.
Everyone is talking about CBD oil, and it seems like almost everyone is using it. The research is ongoing, but the apparent health benefits are overwhelming. If you're going to use CBD products, though, What brand should you buy? First, find out where the hemp was grown. Imports are flooding the market. How potent is it? Look for a brand that plainly states its concentration on the label. And look for full spectrum CBD. This means the oil contains CBD and all the other cannabinoids, terpenes, and nutrients that are found in the entire cannabis plant. Look for Blue Leaf CBD oil. Blue Leaf Naturals is a Kentucky proud company. They use only Kentucky-grown hemp, supporting Kentucky farmers and businesses. Visit their website at blueleafcbd.com now and use the code SMILE at checkout for free shipping.
COYOTE Chris Sutton.
Shamanism.
Spiritual advisement.
Paranormal investigations.
Inspirational presentations.
Bringing light to the darkest places for over 20 years. Go to coyotechris.com to learn more.
Hello, Scarefest. This is Joe Lewis at Bonehead Weekly. Now, I was given special instructions when I took this job that I could either do new releases or classic movies that I think you should watch. Well, I've got neither this week, but I do have a movie I think you should watch. It's just hard to use the C word. Not that C word. Classic. It's Life Force. How many of you out there have seen Tobe Hooper's movie, Life Force? Well, Tobe Hooper's the guy that gave you Texas Chainsaw Massacre. He's the guy that gave you Poltergeist, supposedly. Tune in to Bonehead Weekly. We talk a lot about that. I am a fan of his work, even though a lot of it is not very good. So it's based on a novel by Colin Wilson called The Space Vampires. And it is a brilliant, it really isn't. I tried reading it several years ago. In fact, if you looked over here, if I panned over, there was a chair, it's no longer there, that the paperback version of Life Force, Space Vampires, the book it's based on, held up that chair that I threw away last year for many, many years. Could never finish it. Didn't care for the book. The movie's written by Dan O'Bannon and I almost forgot, Don Jacoby. Now, Dan O'Bannon gave us Alien. He directed and wrote Return of the Living Dead. This movie's bad shit nuts. It stars Steve Railsback. It was a huge film made by Menachem Golan and Yoram Globus. And if you don't know who they are, they ran something called Cannon. There's a great documentary about Cannon, and it's called Electric Boogaloo. They've done a ton of movies in the 80s, a lot of them with Chuck Norris. So Halley's Comet is coming back. They send a manned mission to explore it. They find out that there's this derelict spacecraft in there, right? And in it are space vampires. They spent almost $30 million in the 80s on a movie called The Space Vampires, and it eventually became this, called Life Force. John Dykstra did the special effects. If you don't know who that is, he did Star Wars special effects. This movie looks incredible for 1985. Go back. It had everything except the plot, a screenplay, a director with vision, a leading man, because we had Steve Railsback. If you don't know who that is, he shot the fame. He played Charles Manson in Helter Skelter, the famous TV movie from the 80s. He is in the 70s. He is in a movie I do like, if you ever get a chance to check it out, called Stuntman with Peter O'Toole. That being said, space vampires. So he gets back, the ship gets back without him. He comes down later in an escape pod. The more I tell you, the more it's just going to get confusing. They basically suck the life force from you, these space vampires. And the lead space vampire is a beautiful creature played by Matilda May, topless and bottomless for the most part all throughout the movie. Okay, I know I'm going to be really sexist here, but it is worth it just to see Matilda May. She's quite a person. She's quite an actor. And it must have taken a lot of self-confidence, and she has it, to do the movie topless. I'm not joking. Almost 90% of the time Matilda May is in this movie, she is topless. I belong to a secret group, and I'm not making this up, called Secret Satans. And what it is, it's like Secret Santas for horror fanatics. And anyway, we send each other presents, and you have to put a wish list. And the only thing I could put on my wish list was the steelbook version of this, and I got it. It's just so stupid, though. they're space vampires. They kind of turn them into zombies towards the end of the third act, and the streets of London are just running wild with zombies. But why are they zombies now? Because aren't they vampires? There's some fantastic practical effects in it. Fantastic practical effects. You have to watch it just to see how batshit crazy it was and how it ever got made. And they spent a fortune on it. A fortune. Google it. Thank you. This has been Joe Lewis of Bonehead Weekly. Check out Life Force, Toby Hooper's forgotten movie. Check it out.
I can't go to sleep. My mind says the darndest things. It's like a Mexican Chinese gumbo. It just doesn't make any sense. Wait a minute, what's that? Orange cyclone piss tank? Mashed potato when it's inside a frisbee. Flying squash man? There goes the butterflies again. There goes the butterflies again. Power tool injection. It's a nostril thing you wouldn't understand. Step out, thou the demon. The power of Christ compels you. The power of Christ compels you. Swivel chair Shantuzi. Makes no sense to me. Grip that shag pile, boy. Who's that I see? Handsome devil he be, looking back at me. I might be a toilet seat, but I won't take your shit. It just doesn't make any sense. This part's getting weird. Good night, lover.
And hello, everybody. Yes, I am, in fact, still here behind the scenes. Only glitched it up a couple of times, but I'll fix it in post, as I like to say. It's been a wild ride tonight. I do have some things I want to throw in here at the end of the show. In particular, now I mentioned this earlier. Tomorrow, I will be at the Vet City Con, Bowling Green, Kentucky. That is January 25th, 2020. I will be there manning the Scarefest booth. Brandon Griffith will be there, but he says it's going to be a working weekend, so he's already told me he's going to be like really, really crappy company. Don't forget, everybody, now here's a big one that comes up. March 26th through 29th, Lexington Comic Con. That is coming up in March, and of course I'll be there probably be there all weekend because they never hardly ever let me out of it. But it's a great, if you love cosplay, Comic-Con is the place to be. And then as of just recently, I am booked to be at the Universal Energy Expo, Covington, Kentucky. That's May 2nd and 3rd. I'll have a table. I'll be sitting there right beside Mr. COYOTE Chris Sutton. So, got all that going on. I wanted to go ahead and get those plugs in. Once again, don't forget, we do have the volunteer applications up on thescarefest.com. Plus, we have the speaker applications. So, gonna end you here with a little special treat. There's some great movies. I don't know if they're great. I haven't seen them yet, but the point is they're opening in theaters. They're in theaters right now. One that we've had a movie review on. One we haven't yet because it just opened this weekend.
Have you ever been a nanny?
This is my first live-in job.
Well, I hope you know what you're doing. The children are very special, Kate. They're thoroughbreds.
Geez, your friends must love it here.
I have no friends.
You have no friends?
Yep.
Well, you have one now.
Maybe.
May I ask how the parents died?
Well.
Miles?
Nothing should have to suffer. It's not that simple.
I don't go in that part of the house.
Why not?
Don't wanna.
Hello?
You shouldn't be in here.
What happened to your last nanny?
Like I'd tell.
You need to take charge here, Kate. I know what you're afraid of. Keeping the lights on won't keep you safe.
Can you please stop?
You're gonna leave me, aren't you?
I'm not going anywhere.
Promise, promise?
Cross my heart and hope to die.
Everyone dies, Miles.
Did you see them? I don't want to play anymore. Hey! Why are you doing this?
Stop now.
We're not safe!
Stop giving tales.
Bad dreams?
Listen carefully. You are now 5,000 miles from land, and you're descending 7 miles to the bottom of the ocean. See you all in a month.
Here we go. All right, we're gonna do this. Let's do this.
On a scale from 1 to 10, how bad's my rig?
10. We drilled to the bottom of the ocean, and we don't know what came out.
Gotta get to the station.
How are we even get there?
We walk. We're just gonna walk with insufficient oxygen across the bottom of the ocean.
You don't know what's out there.
Worst idea ever. What was that?
Turn your lights off.
What is that? What is that?
What is happening?
There's something following us.